Hi guys, Dr. Ken Nordberg again. You'll notice my voice is not as good as it once was. It's faded again. I have surgery in about 10 days to fix that. Hopefully this time it'll be long lasting. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that most hunters don't think about too much, mainly deer beds. We see them in the woods every year, and most of us don't realize how important deer beds can be to your hunting success. So there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to deer beds than you realize. But let's start with, like when I talked about lengths of hoofs and lengths of droppings, using those lengths to determine what kind of a deer made them. You can do the same thing with beds. In fact, beds are probably the most accurate of deer signs for identifying the deer that made them. Here in Minnesota and across northern United States, all the way to the Cascade Mountains in Washington to Maine and down in New York, mostly above the Ohio River Basin, most deer are the same size, with a little bit of difference. There aren't many places in the United States where your average dominant breeding buck weighs 305 pounds like where I hunt. That's pretty typical. That's quite a drag to bring one of those out the woods. But just the same, the further south you go, the smaller the deer become. And for that reason, one of the places you can figure out what the lengths of the beds that are for the deer that live in your hunting area is check on page 187 of my Whitetail Hunter's Almanac. And there's a section here that tells you all about how you can determine what those lengths should be. But here in Minnesota, where I hunt, let's start with does. The average doe or mature doe in our area will have a bed about 42 inches long. Might be 41, sometimes 43, but 42 is pretty average. The same is true of yearling bucks. They're about the same weight as a mature doe. A mature doe is a doe that's 2.5 years of age or older. So a yearling buck will have a bed about the same length, 42 inches. Our yearling does have a shorter bed, about 38 inches, might be 37, but 38 pretty typical. So, and then our fawns in November when we're hunting, the biggest fawns, the ones that are born in May, 85% of fawns are born in May. About 10% are born in June, and 5% are born in July, depending on which month their mothers were bred. Now, their beds will measure anywhere from 30 inches for the smallest fawns, the ones that are born in July, to the larger fawns, 36 for the larger fawns. So that's pretty typical where I hunt, pretty easy. You know, I can walk up the bed, 42 inch. You know, we're so used to it, we don't even have to put a ruler on, so that's a mature doe's bed right there. And right there is a fawn bed. So this has to be a doe, it's not a yearling buck. It's a fawn bed right there, so this is a doe, that's a fawn. And a little smaller bed over there, yearlings spend their yearling year with their mothers. And actually we're a doe family beds, and you come upon their beds in the snow, you might see 4 different size beds. You know, a 36, a 42, another 42. They're the same size, but there's a fawn and there's 2 at 42. So obviously this one of those 42s is a yearling buck, and there's a 38. So that's a yearling doe. Typical doe family in November, unless the wolves have eaten the fawns. Our wolves eat 3 out of 4 of our fawns by November 1st every year. No, I guess I don't need that right now. So that's basic. Now, any bed that's bigger, longer than 42 inches is a buck, a mature buck. The smallest of the mature bucks is a 4.5 or 2.5 year old. And its bed will typically be 45 inches long. So you find a 45-inch bed in Minnesota or Maine or in New York or Michigan. That's the bed of a 2.5-year-old buck. Now, the big guys, the big bucks, the bucks that are 3.5 to 6.5 years of age, and very few survive their 7th winter. So those are the typical ages that you'll find in your hunting area. But anyway, our big bucks have beds that go from about 50 to 55, 56 inches in length. Some of them might be 49, but 50 is pretty typical of a 3.5-year-old buck. You don't see many beds that are 56 inch. Maybe you never will where you hunt, but our 305-pound bucks will typically have a bed 55 to 56 inches in length. That's a big buck. Doesn't mean he's got the biggest antlers in the world, but he's a big buck. So, now, those are basic things, you know. Gee, now you can walk in the woods, you see a bed, and you go over there and measure it. So, holy cow, this one is 55. That's a big buck. That buck's going to go on the wall if you get them. You know, it's good to know things like that. Here's another one over here, maybe 100 yards away. That's 45. That's a 2.5. He's probably a 6-pointer with maybe a 14 inch inside spread. Not a terribly huge buck. But so anyway, if you're going to be a buck hunter, it's good to know these additional buck signs when you're scouting and when you're hunting. Good to know. Now, I should probably mention too, you know, you don't see, another reason you don't see many 55, 56 inch long buck beds is because those bucks bed in places that you probably don't want to go. Thick, brushy cover, wind falls down. There are places that are hard to get used to. A lot of trees, mature and mid-age trees. Those are places big bucks like to live. They're kind of out of the way, secluded areas. You have to go places where there's no deer trails, and all of a sudden you're in one. And we'll talk more about what to expect when you walk into a buck bedding area. So now you got those. So what's important about beds anyway? Well, let's start with doe beds. They can be really important when does are in heat in November. When a doe's in heat, the dominant breeding buck is going to be with her in her bedding area. Now, doe bedding areas are usually rather large. You know, the average doe home range is about 125 acres. It can be 90 to 250, depending on the habitat, how good it is, and how many deer live there. But 125 is pretty typical, 126. And each doe range is separate from other doe ranges. Usually there's some kind of topography that separates them, like maybe an old logging road or a rocky ridge or a street or an opening or swamp, things like that, a bog. And each doe with young vigorously defends her range from invasions by other does with young. Now, their bedding areas are difficult to delineate, but they can be rather large. I've known a doe bedding area to be as big as 20 acres. That's pretty large. But this doe would bed in different places in this 20-acre area, irregular shape, each day in a different spot. And there's a reason does keep moving around in their bedding areas, because they have fawns. And you know, fawns, it's popularly believed that fawns have no scent, so wolves can't find them. but our wolves sure find them easy, which proves that idea is wrong. But anyway, to keep fawn scents from building up in any one place and becoming attractive to predators like wolves or coyotes or bear, a doe will keep moving from place to place, and most times there will be fresh fawn scent in only one place on one day, and next day the fresh fawn scent might be 100 yards away. Could be way over there somewhere. So doe bedding areas tend to be large. Now, the best bedding area when you got a fawn is deep grass. If a predator comes along and that doe senses it's near by scent or sound or sees it, it can make a little sound which a fawn understands, kind of like a little short cluck like a turkey will do when they sense danger, and the fawn will flatten itself in that deep grass. Hard to see unless you step right on it, and this is the perfect kind of bedding area for little fawns. So typically, doe bedding areas they might have big trees like big evergreens, which they like. If it's raining or snowing hard, winds blowing hard, they like the umbrella above them from big evergreens, and lots of other deciduous trees. Old ones, bigger, young ones, but with openings here and there, with deep grass in them. And that deep grass and brush, like elders, dry spots to lay down in all of that. So that's kind of typical of a doe bedding area. Kind of mixed timber with some grassy openings in it. So anyway, in the wintertime, the grass might not be so important anymore, but we still have a lot of deep grass openings where we hunt in November, where deer are bedding. Bucks like that kind of deep grass too, you know. When they lay down deep grass, they're hidden. No wolf or man is going to see them. It might be 25 yards away. That realize it's there, you know, unless you're a wolf and you smell it and you're downwind. But for most guys, you know, when you're hunting, that deep grass keeps them well hidden. Whitetails like to be well hidden when they're bedded, and chewing cud and resting. The rest is kind of fitful. They wake up about every 15 minutes to check things out, and their noses and ears never go to sleep. If their ears pick up a sound suggestive of a predator nearby or a hunter, they wake up the deer immediately. Same with odors. They smell, boy, they're awake right now. So, but they like to be well hidden. And because it works so well, you know, predators, wolves can march by, bears can watch by, humans can march by within 25 yards when they're laying in deep grass and not realize they're there. Or maybe even cattail swamp, that's a little dry one in, might be laying in there. The deer laying in that bed, if his head's up, a lot of times he can look over the top of the grasses. If he sees somebody come along, and therefore they're walking along a trail that makes them predictable where they're going. And if they're not hunting, they're not stopping and sneaking and looking around as they're moving along, but just moving straight. We've talked about this, but just moving straight along that trail, and that trail doesn't come any closer than, say, 25 yards. That deer's not going to get out of that bed. You're going to walk right by him and not realize it's there. And you know something, when you figure it out, an ideal number of deer in good forest habitat is about 15 per square mile. And you go walking a mile in the woods, you know how many times you come within easy shooting distance of deer? At least 8 times per mile you move on foot and not realize it. It happens all the time. Well, deer knew that. Well, older deer are really, they have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. And a lot of guys, you know, they're walking in the woods and And then all of a sudden they stop and say, I'm gonna look over this way. It's kind of nice over there. Wonder if there's any deer over there. And when they do this, this buck that's laying there in this deep grass right over there, or the thick cover, or behind a fallen tree, or underneath the sagging boughs of an evergreen right over there, you can't see it, but you stop and you look over that way. The buck thinks you found him. You know, deer don't know we can't smell them like they can smell us. So when we're downwind, but anyway, you stop. And then let's say, gee, I think I'll walk over there. That looks interesting over there. I see there's some deer tracks over there. And you start walking in that direction. The deer jumps out of his bed, you've jumped the deer. This is why jumps happen. And he goes bounding off. And you maybe take a few shots at him. Some hunters, that's the only shots they get is the deer bounding away when they jump the deer. Well, and they aren't very good targets, so you don't get many that way. But anyway, a lot of guys get the idea that I'm pretty good at this, moving through the woods. I can sneak along and they don't know I'm anywhere near until I'm really near, because once in a while I get so close it jumps just 20 yards away and off it goes. You're not fooling the deer, you're fooling yourself. Now you know when that happens. Now, anyway, get back to bedding areas. We talked about what a doe bedding area is like, and why. And this is why it's good to find them. Look for those beds. But the only way you're going to know you're in the doe bedding area is when you find a place with probably grass, or maybe fallen leaves, or snow on the ground. And there's maybe several different sizes of beds, but nothing over 42 inches. It's a doe bedding area. Good to know about that, because during the season when does are in heat, during the 24 hours or 24 to 26 hours that the doe that uses this bedding area is in heat, that big dominant buck is going to be with her. Well, you might say, well, how am I going to know that? Well, pretty exciting thing in our camp every year when there's snow on the ground is that somebody will find tracks where a buck with big tracks, like say 4 inches, who's dragging his hoofs from track to track in the snow. Most times when you see those, you'll see alongside those tracks or mixed up with them are tracks 3 inches long of a doe. That doe is in heat, and that buck is under the influence of her pheromone, and that's why he's dragging this. Well, where's those two deer going to be during the day? Well, in the morning, that buck is going to be with that doe in her favorite feeding area, her current favorite feeding area in the morning. And he'll be there again in the evening for this one day, just one day. And then where's it going to be in the middle of the day? In the doe's bedding area. Now, normally, when does are bedding, you don't see much moving, except maybe when the jaw is going up and down or chewing cud. I've had that many times where I've been close to a doe bedding area, and suddenly I noticed some little thing moving in there. What in the world is that? Put binoculars on it or my scope, and it's a jaw, and there's a black nose, Fu Manchu behind it. It's a deer. And oh, there's the tip of an antler sticking out behind that tree. It's a buck laying over there. Well, anyway, during that day, when a doe is in heat, most of her breeding will occur in the bedding area rather than when we're feeding. When she's feeding, she doesn't want to breed. She wants to eat. Not until she gets back to the bedding area and chewing cud and resting during it. So she'll breed about 4 times during that midday period that they're in that bedding area. And every time that happens, those two deer will get up and they'll be moving around. And sometimes what happens too is that some other buck snuck back into the dominant buck's breeding range. It might be another larger buck, or it might be the doe's yearling buck that got chased away. He wants to be with mama. He doesn't want to be hiding in the swamp. He snuck back. And so what often happens during this midday period is the big buck has got to chase those other bucks out of there, and they'll go flying past you so fast you'll be sitting there sort of crump, 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 and they're gone. And pretty soon, crump, 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 the buck goes back to the doe. And it gets to be pretty exciting out about it. Well, when at midday, well, does are in estrus, and you find tracks of a buck dragging his feet, you want to be downwind of that bedding. So, good day, good place to be, you know, like in the morning, rather than going back to camp for lunch, just head over to that bedding area, midday. Get over there about 9, 10 o'clock. Get there 9 o'clock before the buck and doe arrive. You might catch them, but here they come. And this is a good time to be downwind and well hidden, ground level, using a stool. You can do this easy. Now you get some idea about how important a bed can be, a deer bed. Well, let's talk about buck beds now. Everybody's always anxious to find a buck bedding area. I used to call them buck bedrooms. And you know, when I'm out scouting, you know what I'm looking for to tell me I found a buck bedding area? I'm looking for a cluster of antler rubs. Now, between mid-October and the time when breeding begins in November, a buck will spend a lot of time every day cruising through his breeding area, a big dominant buck, and chasing other bucks away. And before that all happened, those other bucks are making grouse skirts and antler rubs too, smaller ones. But big buck, he's finally got them all cleared out. It's getting close to breeding time. But every day during that period, 2, 3 weeks, he goes back to his bedding area to sleep, to rest. Rest for a while midday, rest in the evening. But he's pretty restless then, because he knows any day now he'll smell the pheromone that comes from a doe in heat. So he's anxious for that. And so even when he's in his bedding area, he may lay down for a little while, and then he gets up, paces around, and pretty soon, I don't know why he decided, I think I'll make an antler rub. And they, you know, bucks like to make antler rubs. He'll find a spot there in his bedding area and make one and work on it a little bit and look at it, and maybe over here another one, and over there another one. A big buck can make anywhere between a dozen to 30 antler rubs within his bedding area. Some bucks don't do it at all. Not all of them do that. But bigger bucks tend to do that. And in the bedding area though, like say a big, one of those 300-pound dominant bucks, he'll probably pick on trees that are 3 to 6 inches in diameter, big diameter. They won't all be on that size tree. When they make an antler rub in a tree at this time of year, they put a little temper into it. She's fighting, it's like fighting another buck. And they'll really put some pressure on that tree. They're going to bend a 3 to 6 inch tree. It's going to be going back and forth, and he's going to be even grunting sometimes, working on that tree. And he doesn't want to lose the fight, you know. That tree's got to bend, so he's going to put some effort into it. So he's not going to be just picking on little 1, 2 inch diameter trees, because they'll just break, and that's no fun, don't want them to break. So he wants bigger trees. And we'll be talking about antler rubs later on. Different sized bucks, different weight bucks, pick on different diameter trees. But what I look for is a cluster of antler rubs. You know, that's one of the nice things about spring scouting. You can see the antler rubs, they're clear as can be. It looks like just made in the spring, say end of April, you're out there, and there they are, fresh as can be. They look like they were just made, even though they were made during the previous October. And you'll look over there, maybe with binoculars, same way over there, no leaves on the trees yet. Oh, there's one, and look around. Look this, oh, there's another one. And there's another one. By golly, we gotta go over there and look at that, because that's almost certain to be a buck bedding area over there. Didn't know that. It's good to know. Not necessarily because it's going to improve your, not necessarily because that's a great place to hunt bucks. And there's a reason it's not necessarily a great place to hunt bucks. But let's go over there. We get over there, you look around. A buck bedding area is usually no more than an acre in size. Small area, you know, just a small place. If there was snow on the ground, you'll find, like say, a 50-inch bed. Here's one right there. Boy, that's a nice, big bed. He doesn't move all around in that bedding area to bed like a doe will do. You know, bucks will sometimes use the same exact bed day after day after day. And then if he does decide to not try another one, it'll probably be just right over there. It'll be close by. And another thing that's typical in a buck bedding area is that every time he gets up, he's going to empty his balls when he gets up. And buck bedding areas have lots of puddles of droppings or clump droppings in the bedding area. Those are two things. Well, the beds, the antler rubs, and the droppings. Lots of droppings. More droppings, except maybe in feeding areas. Feeding areas have the most droppings of any place. But anyway, these are all there. You don't see any little beds in there. There's not going to be any 42-inch beds, no 30-inch beds, nothing like it. Just big beds in that dominant buck's breeding or bedding area. Now, one thing about bedding areas too, buck bedding areas especially, I would say about 90%, it's not true in the desert southwest, but it's sure true in these northern states. 90% of them are within 100 yards of water. Now, if you're wondering where to look for buck bedding areas, get the topo map out, see where the water is. You know, if you spend time hunting around water, you're going to find buck bedding areas. If that with really thick cover, they got dense woody cover. So, anyway, they don't always bed in deep grasses. Some do. It'll be right at the edge where some grass is growing. Kind of, it's open over here, thick over there. It might be right on the edge. And then you get in there where the grasses are, and you say, "Geez, they're all big beds in there." That's a buck bedding area. But there's an escape area nearby. You know, might be a bog or a swamp, a cedar swamp, elder swamp, evergreen bog, some place like that, or cattail swamp, or posted land. And believe me, big bucks know where land is posted, where they aren't going to be bothered, because they've tried it already. They know what to do about that. So, or if nothing else, when things get tough, the big buck decide, you know, I'm going back to the place I went to last year, 6 miles over that way, but nobody bothered me, so that's where I'm going now. So that happens too. It might not be nearby, but those are close. But let me explain to you, I've kind of mentioned that hunting a buck bedding area is not necessarily a great place to hunt. And this is why. Bucks, especially bucks, does do this too a little bit, but big bucks do it almost always. When a big buck always approaches his bedding area, he's been away for feeding or renewing ground scrapes or whatever. Now he's coming back, he'll always approach it from downwind. He might have had to go crosswind, and he might have had to move downwind to get to the place where he could finally turn into the wind before going toward his bedding area. And the reason he does that is he wants to sniff the air coming from that limited area. Make sure there's nothing dangerous over there, like a bear or a wolf or a stand hunter or any kind of hunter. And as he grows closer, he'll start zigzagging from one side to the other. Way over here, I want to check the air coming from over that side of my bedding area, or let's say within 50 yards of the edge of it even. I want to check that air, and then he'll zigzag over to the other side. And he's checking that all along. And then finally he's satisfied, so he'll get back to a central approach again, coming from downwind. Now, when he's coming from downwind, he'll almost deliberately walk through any little openings. Might be only the size of this room, might be only 10 feet in diameter. He'll deliberately walk through some openings. But big trees, maybe trunks far apart, but openings. He's creating a sight trap. Anything that follows his tracks to his bedding area is going to be seen well before it gets to where the buck has bedded. These are traps that he sets up. When he lays down, he's going to be watching this area where he went across, where it's kind of open, where he can see. He can see anything that goes through this area. That's a sight trap. That's number one trap. Now, what he's going to be doing now, and I've seen him do this so many times, they'll get close to where they're going to bed, but they're still going into the wind, and it's thick in there. Maybe trees are down, and it's thick brush, things like that. And he'll jump over these things. He's going over them really high, up to 8 feet above them. I've been in a tree stand when during the season you couldn't hunt, and here comes this buck and I'm watching. And all of a sudden, he's leaping over things, going over. And he's still going into the wind. What he's doing when he does that is setting up a sound trap. Something comes along, like a wolf or a man or a bear. Bears aren't big jumpers. Wolves aren't either. And humans certainly aren't. What he jumped over, you have to go through if you're going to follow his tracks, and you're going to make lots of noise. Or at least noise that will be easily heard by that buck laying down somewhere up there. That's the sound trap. Then finally, he's still going, he gets up, he goes well past the spot he wants to bed might be well back here or back here. But he's going up there, and he'll start making a circle, and he'll circle back to this place over here where he's going to lay down. And when he does that, he goes up there and he's coming back this way. You're following. If you somehow got through the sight trap and the sound trap without the buck knowing it, you're going to end up upwind of it. He's laying there watching downwind, but his nose is going to smell you when your scent is being carried in the air toward the buck. So that's the third trap. And most of the time, you'll be caught in a sight trap well before or any of these other spots, and that buck is going to be in that escape area that's nearby. When you step into this spot, and here's his bed. I have found that bed. I found it. It's snowing. There's not a snowflake in that bed. That buck just left that minutes before I arrived, because I went through this business of trailing him. I just couldn't get there. You know, big bucks are especially gifted, they're especially good at identifying humans one way or another. But boy, when they go to bed, they guarantee it's going to happen. So anyway, the thing is, I've taken quite a few bucks over the years. You know, that's a small number, really. In all my years of 74 years of whitetail hunting, I used to be I always thought when breeding was going on, it's hopeless. You never know where that darn buck was going to be from day to day. Well, I've taught you a lot about how you find out where they are from day to day. But I used to think, oh, it's hopeless. Just luck if you get one during the time, and that's the way it is for most of us. But anyway, but once breeding is over, that first of the three breeding phases of the run, that buck is going to head right to his bedding area. And because he wore out, I mean, that is one tired animal. And kind of beat up, he's lost weight, he needs rest so bad. Sometimes he'll make friends with a deer along the way, sometimes it'll be just a yearling or 2.5, and they think, oh, he's so nice to me now. He's not beating me up. They'll follow him to his bedding area and act as a sentinel there while he sleeps. And that's common. You see two bucks together in mid-November, and they're happy with each other. It means breeding is over. The first breeding phase of the rut is over. So anyway, when he's there, he's got somebody that's more alert and nose and eyes and ears, so he can really relax. Big bucks use other deer all the time, like radar. Anyway, at this time, well, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, that bedding area of that big buck, or any mature buck for that matter, is the most secure area that buck knows. I mean, his chances of survival, he feels, and experience has a lot to it. It's very good if he beds here. Not over there, don't want to be there. Don't want to be, this is where I want to be. This is the safest place in my home range, or breeding range, this square mile. No safer place to be. Sometimes it might be on a shelf near the top of a high hill where you can see a long way out there. Sometimes it might be in a little clump of trees and brush out in the middle of a clear cut or a farm field where you can see a long way. But most forest deer, they have the kind of a setup like I just explained. And there aren't a lot of deer trails there either, very few. And in some of those deer trails, they look like they're hardly been used unless you inspect them a little more carefully. Oh, fresh forage tracks here, or some old ones also. This buck is used this more often. There's something to think about here. I wonder if there's a bedding over here. But anyway, what I've learned is this. If you screw up trying to take a buck at his bedding, a big buck, at his bedding area, he's gone for the season. You've ruined the security of the most secure place he knows. And if that's not there for him, he's going to get out of here. He's gone. You don't have a chance to get him after that. We've learned, my boys and I have learned over the years, it's good to know where big bucks bed, so we can stay away from them. We deliberately stay away from them during the hunting season, so he'll stay there. And that way we have much better odds, now that we know how to hunt him when breeding's going on, for example. That's when we do our best nowadays. But so he'll stay there and be predictable and go to predictable places during predictable times, so we can hunt him, so we have a good chance. Our odds are much better. But once he's gone, you have no odds. You can't get that buck this year. He's gone. And if he happens to be 6.5-year-old, he's gone forever, because you'll never see him again. He'll die during that 7th winter, for one reason or another. But anyway, so that's something you need to know about buck bedding areas. That's our rule. Now, sometimes we'll hunt one during the last day or two, because he might leave for the rest of the season, but that doesn't matter. Our season's over. But he'll be back next year if he's a 4.5 or 5.5 in his prime. He'll be back next year. Because chances are, and this is always good, chances are nobody else in the country here, except maybe your son, like me, is going to get that buck. He's too smart for most hunters. They just can't. But so, chances are in my hunting area, he's going to be back next year. But if you hunt him at his bedding area, screw up the last day or two. So, anyways, but sometimes you get them there too. It's a place to hunt, but you got to be awful lucky and awful good to take a buck in his bedding area. I had a guy write me an email last fall. He said he found a buck bedding area, and from what I taught him, that this is a big buck, and he wants to get him, and he wants to hunt him there. So he wrote me a couple of letters. He wondered about wind direction and where he should be sitting and all that kind of thing. And by golly, he got it. Sent me a picture of it. Nice big buck. So that can happen. But it's a little better than wandering around the woods, wondering aimlessly, hoping to see a big buck sometime during the hunting season, and maybe shoot it. Maybe be lucky if you hit it while it's bounding away after jumping it or something. That's the poorest way to get one. The odds are bad that way. Stand hunting is the best way, but it's only good if the buck is going to be close to where you're standing on him. And there's so many reasons why it might not be, and you got to know why. So anyway, now you know about bedding areas and what you should know about them, what you should do about them. I give you some advice like that, and these are good things to know. So there you go, guys. Keep all this in mind. Now, now remember too, if you're not probably gonna forget a lot of what I said, but you'll find it all in my book. This book you're going to wear out in the rest of your life, looking up all this information. My 10th edition. And then, before you're done here, be sure to register down in that corner there, that little red button, for my YouTube website. And then when you do that, you'll be notified every time I come up with a new one. Might be a few days now. I got this surgery coming up, and my voice will be like a frog for a few days after the surgery. So it might be a few days before I come along with the next one. We got some more good things. You know, one of the biggest problems most hunters have is trying to identify feeding area. And that's one of the most important places to hunt if you're going to be a regularly successful hunter. So next time I talk to you, we're going to talk about feeding areas. And it might take a couple, 3 sessions to explain everything you need to know about feeding areas. So look forward to that, you guys. Punch that little button and you'll get the notice, because the next YouTube presentation I do, wow, it's called, the next hunting seminar I do, you'll be notified of it right away. So thanks, guys. Hope you got your taxes all paid. Now maybe you can afford my book. So we'll see you soon. Bye now. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries. And be sure to sign up for my email updates. Here you'll also find deer and bear hunting articles, my website bookstore, and much more.